We're live on SportsGrid Pro Football today. I'm Kevin Walsh, Ben Stevens, Donnie Rightside. Now joined by the Pro Football Doc, Dr. David Chao, live and in person. Again, I got to make sure I remind everybody off the top, SixScore.com have helping us all year long with the injury analysis to make these bets. Doc, how are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. Yeah, it's been fun. Certainly as it's the survival of the fittest, right? As the games go on, the more injured teams get knocked out. But there's still some injuries to talk about for Super Bowl.
Certainly are. I want to start with Deebo Samuel. And again, these are things that probably don't catch you by surprise as much as it does me. But they go, 50-50. He might not play. And then he's the leading wide receiver for the team. He gets a goal line carry. Is that, it was the NFC title game, Doc? Or, what did you make of his performance in that game?
Well, as we talked about on SportsGrid on several different shows, that I was cautiously optimistic that he would be fine.
Yeah.
That was the line from early week. And sometimes what we don't see is as important as what we do see. And we did not see a scapular fracture like week 6. Yeah. And it was reassuring to hear Deebo himself on Friday before the game said, once we figured out it was not like the week 6 injury, I felt like I was good to go. And that's kind of what we were saying all week long, and it showed. So he's fine.
Yeah. Dr. Chao, on Pro Football Today, we talked to you on that Saturday before Conference Championship Sunday. And one of my favorite things about SixScore.com is the actual SIX score. Out of 100, how healthy is somebody? You mentioned that Deebo Samuel had a score in the 80s, and then we saw the performance in the NFC Championship game.
I should have made him 120.
Then we would have vaulted everything over. But now for Super Bowl 58, with the extra week, time off to heal from whatever the injury was to the shoulder, is Deebo Samuel a full 100% in terms of that SIX score?
Well, it's football, so there are always nicks and so forth, but he's high/mid-90s, right? It's very hard to get 100. Who's pristine at this time of the year? But yeah, full confidence. And like I said, can we revise that to 120 for last week?
Exactly. Offensive line, when we take a look at here for the Kansas City Chiefs, over the years they've had a dominant one. Last week they didn't have Joe Thuney due to the pectoral injury. What's the feeling inside the locker room here, or can you usually play with a pectoral injury that serious?
Here's the problem. Even though it's not a tendon tear and he doesn't need surgery, it's very hard for any offensive lineman to play through a pec because you have to punch out and hold. And it's especially hard since it's his right pec muscle strain as a left guard. As you know, you can't give up the A-gap.
Yeah.
And that's Allegretti's not bad. He did okay. He almost pass rush is the bigger thing. We had a silly little prop at SixScore where we said 0.25 sacks for Madubuike, and he got a half a sack, going up against Thuney a little bit last week. And so I don't think he's going to be able to play this week as much as he wants to.
And how much, Doc, does that, so if Pat Mahomes was injured, right, that wildly impacts then the overall offensive grade that you guys would give the Kansas City Chiefs. We know offensive linemen are very important, but how do you guys handle this injury then when evaluating the full team's SIX score?
Well, we have a formula that, we plug in terms of the health, and there's an offensive line formula. We even go down to granular offensive pass game protection versus run game, abilities. We even break it down, and we have some people that help us. I mean, some coaches, including Norv Turner, that helps us with some of the formulas in terms of what we utilize for the output. And yes, it does an effect, but we even look at things like how good is Allegretti? How good is the backup? And quite honestly, we look at offensive line shuffle. Like, everyone knows Patrick Mahomes if he's in or out and the line moves. But we love the cluster injuries where you don't see it, obviously. And a bigger effect is when, let's say, the left tackle goes out, the left guard slides out, the right guard comes over. Even though it's one injury, you're affecting 3 spots.
Right.
That's not the case here for the Chiefs. Allegretti's just being plug and play for Thuney, so it's less of effect than if there was a lot of shuffle on
the offensive line is always significantly important. We saw how big that was for Kansas City in the Super Bowl loss in Super Bowl 55, and the Buccaneers having a field day against that banged-up Chiefs O-line. As we look at who was with Patrick Mahomes in the backfield, Isiah Pacheco did not practice the week leading up to the AFC Championship game. It's the Wednesday before Super Bowl Sunday, Dr. Chao. What do you expect Isiah Pacheco's practice workload to look like this week?
Look, to me, if you're limited practice is one play or all but one play. So there's a wide variety. And full practice is you did everything the team asked you to do. Look, we saw earlier in the playoffs, Mark Andrews, full practice, but he didn't play. So you can't always go by practice reports, but we're confident that Pacheco will be fine for this game.
Doc, leading up to the game, it's the Super Bowl, right? The last go-around. Let's just bring up Joe Thuney again for a moment. He tries to sell you on the fact that he wants to play. He's got 6-7 months to, rehab that, maybe get a surgery. Is there a harness, or if he was going to play, how could he play this game?
Well, it's not like if it were a shoulder dislocation, he'd be playing with a harness. The problem is you need to be able to press, and if he can't do that, look, could he get out there and play football? I'm sure he could, but the O-line coach and the coaches are going to say, look, you can't protect the A-gap. And look, return to play is always a three-headed monster. The player has to say, I'm ready to go and want to go. The doctor or the medical has to say, okay. And the team, the coach, GM, has to say, okay, yeah, it's a good idea. So I'm sure Thuney wants to play. And I'm sure the doctor said, okay, yeah, he could recover in the offseason. But the coaching's going to say, look, what can you really do to be effective?
Doc, I want to ask you about Christian McCaffrey, because he's the guy that, we know how important he is, we know how great he is, but he seems like at the moment, epitome of, well, nobody's 100% when you get to the end of the season. Whether it's, they're constantly working on the thigh, whether it's the calf. He kind of had a bit of a scary-ish moment where he landed on his head and Eli Mitchell ended up coming in and scoring a touchdown. How do you guys evaluate Christian McCaffrey heading into this game? Because I think we all know he's certainly not 100%.
Yeah, Christian McCaffrey, we think, is going to be fine. The neck/shoulder issue, it was more of a scary-looking fall rather than one that was injury. It's sort of just being checked out, and he did come back to the game. The thigh, you get muscle injuries all the time and contusions. The calf was the biggest worry, and I think he's fine with that. So, yeah, he's in the low 90s just because he's got little nicks. And if anyone believes that there's only 2 or 3 injuries, why do teams routinely in the regular season travel a minimum of 5 athletic trainers, physical therapists, and 3 team physicians?
Right.
They're not doing it for the 2 people on the injury report.
Right.
There's a lot more treatment and stuff that goes on behind the scenes.
That Week 17 game for Christian McCaffrey and San Francisco against Washington was the only game for CMC since the end of October. He hasn't had at least 100 scrimmage yards because of that calf injury. I love the field view at SixScore.com because you see the overall picture of how all 4 units look, San Francisco offense versus Kansas City defense and vice versa on the other side of the football. What is the least healthy unit for these 2 clubs entering Super Bowl 58?
Well, like I said, they're definitely getting better overall. There isn't a least healthy single unit per se. I will call out that the 49ers defensive line is now healthy. Armstead is there, Hargrave, Kinlaw, and that hasn't been for a little while, and especially late December there. So that's probably good. Jerick McKinnon, everyone's okay. He's practicing, but I wouldn't get fooled by that. The core muscle surgery, groin injury that he had, very difficult for a speedy cutting guy like him. And it's still early, but he got activated for the practice window. Look, it's a terminal game. It's the end of the season. By activating him in the practice window, he could actually practice with the team instead of on the side. But that doesn't mean he's 100% or ready to go. So I'm still iffy on the dubious side of McKinnon being able to play.
Doc, Super Bowl 58, Las Vegas. Most people say, oh, Las Vegas, it's hot. It's, steamy conditions. Not this week for sure, and it is in a dome. The reason I want to ask you this question is, halftime is longer than in the regular season. Last year, Patrick Mahomes got injured right before the half. Does that give the medical staff for the Super Bowl more time to engage? And also, if somebody needed IVs, much easier to treat, I would assume, at the half since it's longer?
No question. And, look, in the typical 12 minutes, we get in the IVs anyway. So this is just easy, okay? Big bore, here, IV, here you go. It's like we're in Vegas, so it's like an F1 pit stop, right? Come on, let's go. But yeah, the half times are so long, and I haven't been in a Super Bowl as a team physician, but I've been host physician a couple times with the entertainment and so forth. Look, it literally could be an hour before you're on the field because let's say your defense is on the field to end the half. Then there's the big, long halftime show, and then your defense is on the field again to start. The offense could be on the bench for over an hour. Yeah. A lot of players, what they do will say, look, I'll treat it like a new game. I will take all my gear off, cut off all my tape, take a shower, and go through a pregame routine.
Wow, really?
Some players will do that and get a fresh start on everything because it occupies your time rather than just sit there. Sure. It puts you in a routine to get going.
That's really, really interesting. Doc, I'll just ask you kind of on the way here. You guys have, I know you say you guys aren't handicappers, but you guys find your advantages. Has anything jumped out to the six-score crew yet, whether it's the side, a prop, or total in this game?
Well, it seems like to us in general, other than the Thuney injury, the offenses are healthier than the defenses a little bit. You know, that's probably the main thing as you look at the six-score and field view. And we freely admit that by the time you get to this level, you know, like we were hot earlier in the playoffs, right? Okay, the Eagles are injured, they're not going to win. Cleveland's not going to win. Miami's not, but then they get eliminated, right? So then you got to find something new.
You guys aren't rooting on injuries. It just makes it a lot easier.
Well, you know, but you know, like there's a reason these two teams are here, right? They're mostly healthy, and of course the other issue to watch during the game is the linebackers. Willie Gay with his neck, and Dre Greenlaw with his stinger / neck. And they're both, I think, going to play and be fine. But if they stick their head in and get another hit, that's what we're going to watch for.
Yeah, we'll keep our eyes on it. I guess we don't have to hit on Charles Omenihu. Probably not going to.
Well, see, that's an interesting thing. Like, too bad for him. He's a 49er, right? And then now the Chiefs. And in game, live at six-score, we said, unfortunately, that looks like an ACL tear. And the day after the game, he said, I still remember, he says, I'm playing for sure in the Super Bowl. Because, of course, it's the Super Bowl. He wants to play. And the day after that, the Emorite comes back with the ACL tear. So we just go by video. We don't want to be right on that. And but that's kind of what it looked like, and it's unfortunate for him.
Absolutely. Great stuff, as always, the Pro Football Doc, Dr. David Chao. Make sure you go to 64.com. Pro Football Today continues.